Hello, and welcome back to Mammalian Anatomy at Keuka College. We're continuing our lecture series on the digestive system, and in this video, we're going to be focusing on the stomach. So the stomach is going to be a J-shaped organ with three major functions. Number one, it's going to be responsible for food storage. So food is going to stay in the stomach for about 2 to 6 hours before it empties completely into the small intestine, and it will stay there until the small intestine is ready to digest it and absorb the food. The food can actually store about 1 to 3 liters of food. So imagine like a soda bottle worth of food inside the stomach. That's quite a bit. Next, it's going to be responsible for digesting. Mainly the stomach is going to digest proteins. So we like to think of the stomach as being the end-all and be-all of digestion. However, the stomach really just digests protein. The primary digester of the digestive system is actually the small intestine, and it's going to be responsible for digesting all the biological molecules, such as lipids, carbohydrates, proteins, and nucleic acids. So the stomach kind of gets some undue credit for digesting. So the stomach is mainly going to be responsible for digesting proteins, and it's going to use a protein called pepsin to do that. It also is important in digesting bacteria to aid in immunity. Remember, mucus and debris is actually going to be swept up from like the respiratory tract and swallowed and be sent to the stomach. And the stomach is going to help kind of digest and break down those bacteria that we experience. So also there'll be bacteria that will be on our food, and the stomach with its acidity and its proteins will help with that immunity. Also, it plays an important role in the regulation of delivery. There's only going to be a very small amount of food that will be transported into the small intestine at a time. And so that is going to actually be regulated by a sphincter called the pyloric sphincter. And that sphincter will open and close and slowly deposit the contents of the stomach into the rest of the digestive tract, specifically the small intestine. The small intestine is going to produce gastric juices, and those gastric juices are going to be important to digest protein. And so what are some of the things that is going to be located in this gastric juice? First and foremost, cells are going to create hydrochloric acid. So when we think of hydrochloric acid, it's going to or when we think of stomach acid, it's going to be specifically hydrochloric acid. These mucosa cells are also going to produce mucus that protects the cell from, protects the stomach and the cells of the stomach from that hydrochloric acid. So the hydrochloric acid is going to be important because it's going to help in initiating protein digestion. What will happen is that a very low pH will cause proteins to denature, and it will help that protein unfold and unravel so that more of that protein can be exposed to digestive enzymes. That hydrochloric acid also is important for activating a protein. The stomach produces a protein called pepsinogen. Pepsinogen is the inactive form of the digestive enzyme that would digest proteins. The hydrochloric acid will actually activate that protein and turn it into pepsin, and that pepsin will digest protein in food specifically. So the hydrochloric acid serves two major functions. One, it helps denature proteins to expose more of its structure to digestive enzymes. And 2, the hydrochloric acid will be responsible for activating pepsin, the digestive enzyme that will cut up the proteins chemically. The slurry that is produced between food and gastric juices is called chyme. And so rather than being a bolus, what it is strong and kind of connected together, chyme is going to be more of a soupy consistency, and that's what will travel through the small intestine and eventually into the large intestine. In addition to producing material that is going to aid in the digestion of protein, the stomach also will secrete intrinsic factor and gastrin. Intrinsic factor is a protein that will actually bind to vitamin B12. And that protein will help with the absorption of vitamin B12 within the intestine. And this vitamin is really important because it helps with the production of DNA. So it's a vital protein that we need to get. This protein is typically only found in animal products. So people who are going vegetarian or vegan should find a replacement for their vitamin B12 that they're not getting in their diet. So many times these individuals have to take vitamin B12 vitamins or supplements to be able to perform this vital function. Gastrin, on the other hand, is actually going to be a hormone, and this hormone is going to allow for communication between various organs of the digestive system, and together with the other organs of the digestive system, it's going to regulate the motility and the actions of the organs. So the digestive system, we're not going into much detail, but they do produce hormones, and there is a lot of communication between the organs. And so this will help synchronize the stages of digestion and the movement of material through the digestive tract. So let's talk about the contractions that actually occur in the stomach and kind of the events that occur to mix and move the material into, move the material, and then eventually deposit that material into the small intestine. So normally when the stomach is empty, it produces very small amount of contraction. However, as the food enters the stomach, the muscles will stop contracting, and this will allow the muscles to relax, and the stomach will actually stretch to accommodate that food. It'll allow the stomach to have a larger volume than it typically would have. And the stretch that the stomach experiences will actually be detected by stretch receptors, and this will actually initiate actions such as peristalsis and the release of hormones in the stomach. So these stretch receptors will actually initiate peristalsis. So this will be a rhythmic muscle contraction that is occurring within the stomach. And essentially what will happen is it will move the chyme towards the pyloric sphincter. And what will happen is the chyme will actually move backwards again. So this will actually create a mixing situation with the chyme so that the food can be thoroughly saturated with the gastric juices, can be exposed to the hydrochloric acid and the pepsin, so the protein can be digested effectively. Periodically, what will happen is the pyloric sphincter will open, and as a result, a small amount of the chyme will enter the small intestine. And so we're really regulating the amount of material entering the rest of the digestive tract. This kind of process will occur every 15 to 25 seconds. So a small amount of chyme will enter the small intestine within this period of time. So it will actually take 4 to 6 hours for the stomach to fully empty after a meal. So this goes back to the regulation of motility and movement of material into the small intestine. So that concludes our discussion of the stomach. In the next video, we'll talk about the small intestine, and in our last video, we'll talk about the large intestine. Thank you for listening and have a wonderful day. Bye-bye.